Welcome to the Freelance Journalism Podcast. I'm Katherine Reynolds Lewis, introducing a powerful episode today with Katherine Attiah, who joined us at a raw time for her, just 2 weeks after losing her father and only 6 months into her journey as a media entrepreneur. She really went there with me, sharing the turbulent years that she's experienced after being fired from the Washington Post over a social media episode, recruiting Jamal Khashoggi to the Post, and then his assassination and the aftermath. We hear about being the daughter of immigrants, her path to journalism, and what she's exploring now as a multi-hypenate independent. I hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. And again, huge thanks to Katherine Attiah for being with us and being so vulnerable. Enjoy the episode. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us for this bonus interview produced by the Institute for Independent Journalists, whose mission is the financial and emotional sustainability of freelancers of color. I am thrilled to introduce Katherine Attiah, a journalist and former columnist for the Washington Post, known for her work on race, gender, human rights, and international affairs. She is the founder of the Resistance Studies series and writes the newsletter, The Golden Hour, as well as her ongoing book projects. Thank you so much, Katherine, for joining us, especially at a raw time for your family.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with where you are now. You teach independently through the Resistance Studies series school. You're writing books and you have a newsletter. I imagine you're also training and invited to speak and guest lecture. Give us an overview, if it's not too overwhelming, of all the projects you're pursuing and how you think about different parts of your work portfolio.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, someone was telling me the other day, like, Karen, you have a lot going on. And I had to be like, do I really? I guess. I mean, well, okay. So, gosh, I think as of, let me check the date. As of tomorrow, it's going to mark 6 months since I was illegally fired from the Washington Post. So it's been 6 months since kind of being in this liminal phase. And so right now, I would say what consumes the most of my time is, Resistance Study Series, which probably a lot of people know is the Resistance Summer School, which I started last year out of a fit of I guess indignation and wanting to do something after my course. I was teaching race and journalism at Columbia. That course got canceled for what I believe are nefarious reasons. So while I was still a columnist at the Washington Post, I started teaching the class independently, which then grew into basically a school. And so right now I'm in the process of we're launching a new spring course on the World Cup and global politics after that class got canceled by the news school. So this whole backstory there. So yeah, I spend most of my time being headmistress slash business owner slash marketer slash lead instructor. So I'd say that's what consumes most of my time. And then secondly to that, yeah, I have a Substack. So occasionally, you'll see me posting essays and things to the like. I have to be honest, still trying to find my rhythm and in some ways I'd have to say my voice a little bit again. Right now, we can get into that later. But yes, there is a Substack, The Golden Hour. And then I am, yes, working on moving forward with publishing the book on Jamal Khashoggi. I have some other books in myself that I'd like to do in terms of, combining my deep interest in philosophy and resistance and power and feminism and martial arts. So that's something that would be a dream project to do. And then aside from that, yeah, from time to time, you'll see me in The Guardian. And what else, Catherine? Oh, yeah, you might see me from time to time in the ring as an amateur movie writer. So yeah, I guess that's a lot, but I guess what I can at least say that these are all this is work that I care about. So I'm privileged to be able to do that.
Yes, and we contain multitudes. We can do all of the different parts of ourself. And I love that. I think especially as an independent media maker, you can be all things, and to you they make sense. There's that through line, and it seems to me it's like a through line of resistance and fighting. And I don't know, how would you characterize what ties together all of those projects?
Again, someone was asking me, so what do you want to be? Like what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm just like, and I think about that a lot. I'm like, am I still a journalist? I mean, I'm a writer for sure at
Hmm.
heart. And I'm like, well, how can I be a modern day warrior philosopher? And like, like how did that work? And I actually am finding myself studying like, people who both train physically and
Mm,
intellectually. And, I've been reading, I just spent a few days in Selma, Alabama, and
mm,
really kind of what is it like to embody your values? What does your daily practice look like? Like, who are the writers um, who incorporated, whether it was meditation, whether it was training, whether it was managing their own sort of
yes.
emotions, like, what does that look like? So I find myself in a period right now of, like I say, warrior philosopher in a time of study, right? Like
Mm,
getting back to sharpening my reading in ways that I sometimes wasn't able to when I was at the Washington Post, So, yeah, I mean, I think it all makes sense. I think when I was in the mainstream media in a lot of ways, I didn't fit into these boxes
hmm.
very well. I had to, be like, oh, that's cute. That's nice. But can you like do the thing on that headline, that news that just broke like
Right,
yesterday?
right,
Right,
right, right.
So like I said, I'm still building up even courage myself still. Like I'm hoping that we're in a time where the multi-hyphenates of us all, the multidisciplinary or multidisciplinary people, right?
Yes,
That
yes.
this time, I hope.
Well, one of the conference sessions that really stayed with me was on media makers who have their
Mhm,
own newsletter or
mhm,
video first channel, and I do hope that this is the era when small and medium sized media businesses can
mhm.
succeed because we don't need to support a whole operation,
True.
international news gathering, right? We can be small and successful for everyone in the way we define success. So I'm going to hope that manifests for all of us.
Yeah.
And congratulations. It seems like the Resistance Summer School really exploded. You had nearly 1,000 people enrolled in 2025. How did you figure out to quickly pivot to online teaching, and what were some of your learnings from that experience?
Hmm. Like I said, I mean, I was powered by both a desire and love of not just teaching, but again, like I designed a course for Columbia's international or the School of International and Public Affairs, like the course that I felt like I needed when I was an international affairs student, right? So looking explicitly at the role of race, media, and how our global affairs, our diplomacy is shaped, how our media is shaped, and after 10 years of being at the Washington Post and having that experience as, again, my background as more of an international kind of development background, I was just shocked that like there wasn't a course that put all these things together, which of course like also tied into so much of my own work at the Washington Post, both as an editor and a writer. So fast forward to last year, I think, of course, as a human, righteous fury,
Right.
sadness that like, oh, okay, this syllabus that I'd built over 3 years was just gonna sit in a closet somewhere. And again, I think seeing, and all of us were seeing the time at the time the news headlines were about Colombia caving to the Trump administration. Um, being the rumors were, the headlines were being willing to put certain studies like federal watch,
Hmm.
basically. And yeah, I think it's just one of those things where it hit at the right time. Everyone's pissed off at these
Yes.
institutions, and me wanting to do something that would be constructive. Um, so I guess what I learned in the last year, especially, well, first of all, is to not be afraid of, like, I just started with like, hey guys, I have this class, would you take it? And I would have been happy with like 20 or 30 people.
Hmm.
I would have been like, okay, that would be fun. It'd be a little extra cash, but like, okay, that'd be cool. I did not expect like 2,000 people to
Yeah.
sign up the interest form and then 500 to enroll, and then we added. So I guess like, I mean, some of it is kismet, I think, but also I think we're in an era where, first of all, if there's anything good that came out of the pandemic, at least for adult learners, right? It's that we've now, like the stigma of doing things online is a lot lessened.
Hmm.
And it means that like I'm able to reach literally 10 times as many people as I did at Columbia with, to be able to bring in people and they're not restricted by, their whether or not they can pay tens of thousands of dollars
Hmm.
a semester just to listen to me speak. Like that's the essence of it all. I'm like, to me, like if we get down to the essence of what education is, it's basically someone who has knowledge and other people who want it, put them in a room together, and that's all the exchange really is. Yes,
Hmm.
it's structure, but now we've gotten to a point where universities have become so much more maybe interested in becoming capitalist hedge funds and with
Hmm.
education on the side,
Hmm.
that I just thought, well, we're in this time that we do need to get back to the basics. So I think for me, this was that. So, and I also, was intentional about designing access to the course in a way that people still valued it. So like we had a tiered pricing system, so people could pay as little as 100 or two
Yeah.
hundred dollars, all the way up to 1,000, $2,000. And but the more that people paid, of course, the more they got, but also the more scholarships they supported. So the
Hmm.
more people paid, the more people could get access to it. So it's created like a self-sustaining ecosystem, so where don't have to depend on, outside VC,
Hmm.
like, and it allows for me and the guest speakers that we bring on to be completely free, which is
Right.
like nice,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is really, really nice. And like I said, I mean, I think we're in a time, and I think about this a lot, right? So, like the parallels with education and journalism, I think as a journalist, I even teaching this class and researching for the class on race and media, I realize how ignorant I have been about media history, even in the US. So as
Mm.
people now are seeing, oh my God, what are these mergers? What like Paramount and like CBS, like now people are kind of getting into like media policy and antitrust and things like
Hmm.
that. When before it was a bit kind of obscure and in the weeds. But now the class that I teach and the books that I teach are about how the business of media in America started way back in the 1600s, right? So tracing that and tracing international journalism through an American media lens, so much of today makes sense. Yeah. So I think even for me, and for journalists, I see, what I'm doing. I tell everyone, I'm like, we're at first, like I said, I called it summer school, and it kind of caught on, and everyone's like, we're going to resistance summer school. And in a way, it's like it's true. We're all in remedial education. Like
Yeah.
basically what I'm offering is like a remedial education class for what we didn't learn about the media in this country,
Hmm.
we didn't learn about race in this country, and what we didn't learn about how international affairs and race and racism have shaped so much of what we see is in the international order today. Yeah. So um, I think people are hungry for that. I think we all kind of this moment we realize we've gotten to this dark place, and everyone
Right.
is like, "How did we get here?" And like I think part of what journalists and educators do is our jobs are to try to explain that and try
Yes.
to, give answers to that. And I enjoy doing it in an educator format because it allows for us to not necessarily have the answers, but just, all right, let's sit and like think through this together,
Hmm.
and process this together and like bring in, experts, just bring in alternative viewpoints and like
Hmm.
wrestle together in a safe environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's
And
been
I am so interested that you're putting together a course on global soccer and world politics, and of course you've written about culture and who owns culture and the impact of culture on politics. But tell me what you're hoping to achieve and sort of how is that coming together?
yeah, I mean, I think, for me, part of what's nice about being independent is whether it's independent from academia or independent from sort of journalism mainstream organizations is that we can move fast, right? In a
Right.
traditional university setting, they plan their curricula maybe 2 years or something in advance. Whereas here, I'm able to say, no, the fire's here now. Like, let's have sessions on Minneapolis now.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the World Cup and global politics, FIFA. Let's have a course now,
Right.
right? So we're able to be fast. So far, we've got the course for the World Cup and politics starts in late April. So we've already got about, yeah, we're getting like 130 students, so people can still sign up.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I think it's just a chance to expand. And my grand vision is in a lot of ways, yeah, subjects and courses that are being canceled, that are being challenged,
Yes.
that there's a place, of course, it's not the same as a university setting, but yeah, you can still teach. Your syllabus don't have to go to waste. There's a
Hmm.
place, for them to come what that, you're not going to be worried about some state restrictions.
Right. It's sort of like the journalist impulse to never leave a good, anecdote or piece of a storyline in your notebook, right? Make sure it gets out somehow. And
Somehow.
so definitely as freelancers, I think we always try to do that.
Mm.
If you're done with one project, use the seeds of whatever you didn't get in there. And I'd love to hear where you are with your book writing process and sort of how do you balance or not balance that with RSS?
Yeah. How do I balance or not balance? I mean, I well, first of all, I mean, with the book on Jamal Khashoggi, and it's out there. I mean, I had completed a manuscript, and then my former publisher, for whatever reason, I believe it's political, but decided to not continue with the editing process. So right now I'm in the process of, like I said, righteous indignation and fury, and I think everything going on in terms of censorship and attacks against journalists, it's all the more important to try to get this book back out there. So that's what I'm trying to do. I actually took an enforced break a few weeks ago to, finish the a new proposal, given everything that's happened,
Yeah.
especially everything that's not just happened to me, but I mean, yes, but also what's happened to the Washington Post itself.
Yeah.
Um, that, this project now, for me, almost what, um, 8 years after, almost, gosh, after Jamal's murder, now takes on a new chilling meaning
Yeah.
for me. So maybe there's some divine reason as to why it was delayed. Maybe, who knows? Maybe I was meant to capture the Washington Post itself being butchered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's something I've been pretty determined to do. But yeah, I find myself saying, okay, this week, this week is just on that. In terms of structuring my days, I try. I mean, with recent events in my family, it's obviously been hard. But in general, I try to, when I get up, and I try to like meditate or have some like kind of morning
Mm-hmm.
cleaning rituals. I try to save anything related to deep work, like books, stuff like that, first thing in the morning, like if I can, before
Mm-hmm.
sunrise, with like
Yeah.
tea and calm West African kora music is my thing. So I just, following just sort of the science in terms of like deep work before the world wakes up, before
Mm-hmm.
there's emails, before. So that's how I try to balance in my sort of day-to-day life. Otherwise, sometimes it just means blocking off a week or a day just for long form work.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious also how your craft has changed. Are you on the newsletter, or are you working with an editor, or you just sort of hit publish? And what does that feel like to be freed from the confines of the word count or the,
hmm
sort of standard newspaper opinion piece?
hmm I guess I find myself, yeah, I would like an editor. I don't have an editor yet. I miss if there's anything I do miss, it's like the collaboration,
Yeah.
with having someone who's like just kind of dedicated to making your work better or having ideas, or at the very least being like, hey, it's Thursday. Like, let's try to get on a weekly schedule. So I do miss that right now. And like I said, I think I'm still, you're still catching me in a time where I'm like, how do I want to show up in terms of cadence, in terms of my work, like in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, am I a news person anymore? Is that even what I really want to do? But as far as the craft goes, I think if anything, I feel like, and maybe part of it is not just age or wisdom, but I do feel like I'm a bit less inclined to always feel like I need to say something on everything, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think always in my work at the Washington Post in general, I've always kind of taken my style of writing in general is very, um, like I said, like I'm processing the world. So like
Mm-hmm.
when I wrote just recently about my dad, like I literally, it's almost back to the blogging days. Like I literally could not sleep. The tears were not going anywhere. Like I said
Mm-hmm.
in my piece, like I know that this void is not going to be filled by, definitely not by doom scrolling, but writing is how I function and how I move emotion through my body, and basically ask the world, like, I'm feeling this. Have y'all felt this before?
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm feeling this. What do you think?
Right. Right.
And that's sort of always been my style in a way, and layering in just being as human, I guess, as I can be.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. So
Yeah.
sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I guess people say like, oh, my work is powerful. Sometimes I don't really understand it. I'm just like, I'm still the 12-year-old who, or 8-year-old who like emulated Harriet the Spy and I kept journals all of my life. Like,
Yes.
and I don't really know if I've changed that much, to be honest. Maybe
Well,
I need more facts, but
I have a journal laptop cover.
mm,
So whenever I open up my laptop to write, I channel Harriet the Spy too.
yeah, I keep saying there is a pipeline of girls, women journalists, or women journalists today who like the pipeline through Carmen Sandiego, Harriet the Spy, maybe even me. I also add Lara Croft a little bit because I
Oh,
like
nice.
that character. But it's this. I my to be honest, it's my process hasn't changed. Maybe the style of how my experiences are now deeper.
Mm,
But I don't really know it's just not to make a martial arts analogy, but I make martial arts analogies all the time. It's like, how's your craft improved? And it's, like Bruce Lee will still say, like, a punch is still a punch. You can still
mm,
do it maybe different ways and maybe coming from this an uppercut, but like at the end of the day, it's still the same. You're just trying to find the right combination of
Hmm.
words.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Well, I love that image of you as the powerful 8-year-old or 12-year-old. So I'm guessing maybe you haven't changed that much. One of my favorite episodes of the freelance journalism podcast that we've had was with Chris Guyamali talking about, getting his start, just like getting the reps in with online writing. And that is how we all process and understand the world and find our voice and figure out, where we're headed. So at least those of us who are
So
writers.
that's so hilarious. I know Chris, and he and I are fellow martial artists.
Oh no, that's so funny.
We talked about Muay Thai, and maybe it was on this spot where we talk about the similarities of, and I literally have a book called like The War of Art, like what it means to, because like I also do think writing is a form of hell, it is narrative warfare, right? It
Yes.
is, you do have to have a certain level of courage and audacity and delusion to bring what is out from you or in the world and put it onto paper and say, or to screen and to say that people should listen to you. And it is like, that's funny you said that. So many of my friends have been saying the same thing about like writing is getting your reps in. It's muscle memory.
Yes, yes. It's a practice, it's a discipline, right?
Correct.
All of those things. So we've got a snapshot of your present. Let's go back to your childhood in Texas and how you came to a career in journalism, and just learning about you, preparing for this. A few things in your biography do resonate with me. I'm also the daughter of an immigrant from a former British colony and sort of perplexed my family building this career first within and then outside of mainstream media. So I'd love to hear about your childhood, family of origin, your education, Fulbright, other formative experiences that led you to today.
Sure. I think some of my earliest formative memories were when so my parents are West African. My mom originally is from Nigeria, but then was a war refugee from the Biafra War, so then
Yeah.
ended up in Ghana. My father was Ghanaian. And so some of my earliest memories from when I was like 6 or 7 were going to Ghana, spending the whole summer with my grandmother and my cousins and uncles and just living with them for the summer. And one thing I remember like voraciously reading while I was there was The Adventures of Tintin, the
Oh,
comic.
yes. Right.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
young Belgian reporter, and he was always going on these adventures around the world. I mean, okay, I know now in 2026 some of those adventures were hella racist.
Yes.
All of that.
Well, it's a
Um,
colonial cartoon,
yeah,
right?
yes, definitely, definitely. But at the time, I remember like reading and rereading all the Tintin comics and just thinking it was so cool that this enterprising reporter and his little sidekick Snowy and these characters that he'd meet from all over the world, like I think it just sort of captivated me in a way and imprinted on me while I was exploring as a 7-year old, like, whoa, this is Ghana, like things are interesting and different.
Hmm.
So there's that. So imprint number one, I think as a kid, so I grew up in Dallas. I grew up or south of, and I was very, very lucky to have I went to a very small school that really emphasized reading and writing and critical thinking. And looking back now, we were reading, really sort of challenging, sometimes heavy texts and encouraged at a very young age to not just read them, but like the teacher would be like, to sort of critically analyze them.
Mm.
So I just grew up with that. My dad loved books, so we always had like a small little, even like library room of books. And so he would just tell me, he's like, if you need to figure something out, there's gonna be a book for it. Just find a
Hmm.
good book. So it was a lot of that. And then like I said, like I was very into Harriet the Spy, and I feel like I was the type that um I thought people were interesting. I'd be the type to like just like in Harriet the Spy do like psychological profiles
Yes.
like a weirdo. But I just liked observing people and dynamics and making little notes
Mm-hmm.
about that. Even when I might have been 8 or 9.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, what I thought I wanted to do, or what I thought I could do, ultimately, I wanted to be a philosopher. I wanted
Mm.
to be able to, again, observe the world and ask questions about what it means to live a good life as an individual, what it means to build a just and good society. So yeah, I think coming into journalism, I didn't really aspire. Maybe I thought I wanted to be a radio show host because I like
Mm-hmm.
talking. Apparently, I was a chatterbox. I would like to talk a lot. Surprise. But ultimately, I think what drove me and what still drives me is this like constant desire to really deeply know something, deeply
Yes.
know a thing, deeply know a person, even if it's complex, deeply, which means being able to sit with the dark and the light, the good and the bad, and hold those two things together and be able to express that, not necessarily resolve it. So, which made me a little probably tough for my parents. I I definitely was the type they'd be like, I'm going to the Caribbean, this place you've never heard of before, with, you know, because I believed that I need to. And that's when I went to Curacao.
Mm-hmm.
And I still remember my dad thinking I was going to be sex trafficked, drug trafficked, human trafficked,
Right?
all the things. But I was like, Dad, I have to go. Like, I just was always that type. I'm like, I know this sounds crazy, but please don't leave me. I need to do this. So yeah, I went to the Caribbean after Columbia grad school, and I freelanced there for AP. So that's
Mm-hmm.
really where I got my start in journalism. And then from there, came back, and that's with those clips in a way. That's how I got a job at the Post.
Right.
Pretty from
Right.
there. So it's always just been for me like I'm not satisfied with like just what people tell me. I'm always like, let me go check this out for myself.
Yes. I have definitely can trace many turning points in my education and career from someone saying I can't do that, and suddenly that's the only thing I want to
Oh,
do.
exactly. And I mean, I'm sure it would resonate. Like, I think there is something to being, again, parents being from West Africa. I had a deep feeling that I didn't know my own culture, didn't know my parents' own native tongues, and was keenly aware of the racist stereotypings of Africans and then of Black people like around the world. So while I was at Northwestern, like my first printed pieces were rebuttals to what I felt like were racist
Mm,
stereotypes of Ghana. And I was just, I think it was then that I was like, okay, like not only do I want to know things, but I also want to resist harmful stories and harmful narratives
mm,
and push back. So I think, yeah, it was pretty early where I realized that like um, storytelling is also warfare, right?
yes. Yes.
And for those of us who've both had in some ways, the privilege of living in the West, or privileges according with that, there's a disconnection. There's almost a grief. There's an emptiness that we have been separated from these lineages and these cultures in a way, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And then you have the extra layer of colonialism, and my mom grew up in Singapore where this British culture, like Tintin, we read all these like
Mhm.
the stories about Mallory Towers, the sort of British boarding school, and all of that. In some ways, you have to sort of almost decolonize yourself to recover. And my mom speaks English as her first language because she grew up in. So even she was divorced from that culture and the language and the history. And yeah, I think trying to re discover that and understand it is a deep need. And as the child of an immigrant, I know they were stunned that I could make my way through life with only a bachelor's degree. How has your family responded to your career? And do they still worry about you, or have they been like, okay, this is just what Karen's gonna do?
Uh, and in the aftermath of my father passing, like it's been an opportunity to really revisit, some of these questions. And one thing I am grateful for in the last few months of his life is, in fact, we thought there were some times even last year that he wasn't going to make it. So we already started digging through photo albums and archives, things
Mm,
like that. And I found a newspaper clipping from like what 1968 when he arrived in the U.S. And it was like talking about my dad and that he was there he was on an exchange program for high school, and it mentioned that he was the editor of his high school newspaper. And
mm-hmm.
my dad was a doctor growing up, so I never knew him as anything other than like a doctor who was constantly in the hospital.
Mm,
And so I remember I like a couple of months ago, I was like, he actually was in the hospital and but recovering from something. And I held up, I was like, Daddy, what is this? What do you mean you were a journalist? You really
yeah.
told me all this time, the last like 10, 12 years of my life. Like, and he
Hmm.
told me actually, and I'm grateful to have it on camera. He kind of laughed and he was like, oh yeah, yeah, I actually got kicked out of school for writing articles that the school administration didn't like. And I was like, what? And again,
Oh,
mind you, this is just a few months after I got fired from the Washington Post for
yeah.
stating facts. And it both blew my mind and was a blessing to sort of know, okay, but I always felt a little odd. I have a brother who's also a doctor,
Right.
a sister who's a therapist, and then I'm out, as my mom would say, gallivanting around the world.
Yes.
And definitely I was pressured to become a lawyer for sure. And
Hmm.
and I just decided to take this path. I mean, two things. I mean, I think, well, I don't think, I think most immigrant parents would still be proud that their kid was at a place like the Washington
Oh,
Post,
for sure, for sure.
collecting all the brands. So I'm sure there's that, but, or seeing, on TV and like, there's that. But yeah, I also think, I remember my mom when I first started at the Post, I wrote a piece, making fun of the Nigerian president,
Mm,
and it went viral in Nigeria. And this was after the Bring Back Our Girls thing.
hmm.
And I was just like, he's making stuff up. This is stupid. That was my first piece in the Post. And the president's people were extremely upset. And I was like, "Ah, whatever, like, eh." Um, and but I was happy that it landed. But my
Right.
mom, I remember, told me like, Karen, be careful.
Yeah.
There are many people in this world who do not like journalists. That was 2014. So fast forward to now.
Yeah.
And of course, have been on hit lists. I've had to get security.
Yeah.
I obviously seen colleagues, friends be arrested for doing their jobs. And of course, Jamal Khashoggi, who died, who was murdered
Right.
for doing this. So I think there's pride, and I know that there's fear. I know my grandmother told my cousins, like, we don't need any more journalists in the family. We've got Karen.
Oh.
Like, they're just, no, I mean, but it's more so,
One grandbaby to worry about is enough.
yeah, and obviously my path is not typical, obviously. But like I said, I just think journalism for a lot of us, many of us don't do this to get
Yeah.
rich or to, I just fell into this because it was a calling in a way.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I want to believe. Well, no, I don't have to believe. I know my dad at least told me before he passed. I was like, Daddy, like, wow, okay, so you get it. He's like, yeah, keep going.
Oh.
So yeah.
And I'm so sorry for your loss. And he just seems like a remarkable man and parent and a curious mind himself. Your tribute to him was just lovely, beautiful writing. What would you like people to know about him? What part of him do you carry with you?
Part of him do I carry with me? I definitely think one thing it's not on my screen now. One thing he and I definitely shared is well, how do I phrase? So we both love gardening.
Hmm.
We both really liked plants. However, I was more skilled at keeping them alive.
Got
I
it.
think he liked accumulating them. And I'd written in the post before about an unfortunate incident involving my dad and some landscapers and my favorite fig tree.
Yes.
But I guess, and and honestly, this is something I'm reflecting on now. He was the one, like I said, sometimes I had family who were like, ooh, like just chill out, like, just take the normal path or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he always supported my dream. And he said, Karen, sometimes people aren't going to always understand maybe the choices that you make,
Mm-hmm.
but at the end of the day, a lot of times they will still respect you making the choices that you need to make for yourself, basically. Um, actually, speaking of independence, he was the one who always told me, even as a kid, he was like, it's better to work for yourself.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
ended up having his own practice, his own business, his
Mm-hmm.
own office. So
Yeah.
I definitely have that imprint of like, even when I was at the post, like, it's better to work for yourself. It's
Yeah.
better to work for yourself. And so, for me now to like come into like having this identity as a business owner now,
Mm-hmm.
um, kind of following in his footsteps in that way, in a different way,
Right.
is really profound, I suppose. But yeah, it was him who was like, um, he just wanted that freedom.
Yeah.
He didn't like being uh told what to do in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps I'm the same way. I wish I'd um talked to him more about, I don't know, like business
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah.
But and I wish he always told me to write books. So I'm a little sad that he couldn't see me publish my
Yeah.
first book. But in our traditions, I like to believe, or I tend to believe that on the other side, perhaps without a body that's failing them and sick, that maybe he's even more able to help me get this
Hmm.
done from the
Yes.
other side. So yeah, in terms of books and business and plants and going to Ghana, I credit him obviously for being able to be connected with my Ghanaian roots. So I even just started just now learning his language.
Yeah.
Literally the weekend before you pass, I took my first language class. So
Oh.
yeah, yeah, now it's a matter of continuing and keeping on. He was a fighter. He was actually really like
Hmm.
he'd been through so much with the health failing, but he always rallied back until, So I think for all of us, we're like, Daddy was a fighter. And so I'm like, me too. You know.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Karen. I have a picture of him and I appreciate it.
So,
What I'm curious, what order are you among your siblings?
yes.
Yeah, youngest?
No,
Middle?
I am the oldest. I feel
No.
like I don't really have,
Yeah, oldest I think are like the rule followers.
no, I'm not. I
I get
think
that.
it's like I don't, but then at the same time, I feel like I'm a little bit of the, I don't know, you've seen those eldest daughter memes where like eldest daughters are the toughest men you'll ever meet. Like,
True, that is true.
um, yeah, I think I sometimes I would say I'm like to my younger siblings, I'm like, I absorbed the blows or I lived so that y'all learn or whatever.
Yes.
Um, But no, my siblings are great and definitely like, yeah, my uncle the other day told me I guess I'm considered the wild child, which is fine.
I love it. And let's talk about your time at the Washington Post. You helped launch the global opinion section. You recruited so many writers, including Jamal Chokchi. What are sort of for you the things that stand out from that period in your career?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what can I say? Those are like the good old days to me,
Yeah.
in terms of journalism, or in terms of being at the Post. I mean, I started basically right after Bezos bought the paper. So, he bought the paper in 2013. I started in 2014, and that was around the time when we had a lot of, young folks, young people of color,
Yeah.
especially being brought in to basically kind of modernize and make the Washington Post a lot more sort of digital friendly, social media friendly. When I got there, I think the opinions, and I stayed in the opinion section the whole time, so I've always been in editorial.
Hmm.
Um, it's that time, I mean, clearly, like I said, I came in as a more so as a producer, but my job, I was pretty good at Twitter and social media, so my
Yep.
job was to try to bring the Post into the social media era and
Hmm.
build its presence on the opinions page on the opinion social media accounts. But I was lucky in the sense that our late editor, Fred Hyatt, who had been the longtime editorial page editor, really wanted to build a culture of the editorial section of anybody who's here or has something to contribute beyond their job title. So even though
Mm.
I was just a producer, he saw my work, he saw my writing, and said, "You can write anytime." So I was like, "Nice, I'm gonna write all the time." In addition to my actual job, so I was always writing. I was always just, even in the editorial board meetings, like being able to sit there and of course I couldn't sit there. I'd be like, "Hello, why aren't we covering Africa?" Like,
Mm.
and then finally people say, "Well, you do it." And so then, I got a chance to write many of like editorials related to the continent, which was very,
Hmm.
very cool. So I was able to get such a deep and rich experience because um, I had bosses that were able to meet me at where my ambition was, and
Mm.
where my
Yes.
energy was. Um, and and I was I also, um, at the time, the section was very much known for, of course, people could disagree politically, but Fred Hyatt had a real passion for human rights and democracy around the world.
Hmm.
I had worked quite a bit with Freedom House and other sort of human rights and freedom of expression projects before. So for me, that was also the mission of what we were doing. Like, it
Hmm.
wasn't just that we were doing journalism. I mean, we were told to do good,
Right.
and to write in defense of what was or what we thought to be right. We didn't always agree on what was right, but we at least almost were sort of trained to. So, again, being able to meet human rights activists from all over the world who wouldn't be able to get an audience, say, at the White House, but they would stop by the Washington Post and at least we'd be able to sit with them and
Mm.
listen to their stories. And I learned so much
Yeah.
about the world, just even from those meetings that we were us young,
Yeah.
folks. It was education. Like that was also part of my education.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then, Bezos said at the time that he wanted to be a global paper, and so we decided to branch out into very specifically targeting English-speaking audiences around the world. And so again, raised my hand. I was like, "Yeah, you're gonna need like a traffic controller for that." And they were like, "Okay, you figure it out." So I wrote my own job description and I was like,
Amazing.
"Here you go." And they said yes, and we created the job, and sat in that. Yeah, and same thing. I mean, I think it's just the opportunity to be and this is around 2016. So
Hmm.
Trump is on the ascendance. The whole world is like, this is Trump, this is
Yeah.
Brexit. If
Yeah.
people remember, the whole world is like, what is going on with America, with Europe? Um, but also, our job was to still keep an eye on what was going on the rest of the world. And the thing about Washington is we have, like I said, we have, or like I tend to say, we have the professional interpreter class, right? Like we've got these think tanks,
Right.
we've got these these people who, and I've worked in some of them. So, like I understand the sort of,
No shade.
yeah, no shade, but the opinion section was a chance to actually hear from people from the country,
Hmm.
to be able to give their on the ground or their historical experiences instead of things always being filtered through policy experts, right?
Hmm.
So it was um it was really fun. So yes, voices like Barkadat, of course, Jamal Khashoggi, Rakaya Diallo,
Hmm.
we were able to, it was fun to like
Yeah.
curate this team, this
Yeah.
roster of people who are superstars in their own rights in their own countries and vice versa. They were proud to be able to say, oh, we have a space in the Washington Post, which carried weight. So um, for me, again, same thing. I liked the I like the privilege of being able to give I hate this word, give people a voice, but to give space and to give like I mean, yeah, I mean to some writers who were becoming voiceless in their countries, we could kind of punch back in some ways at their own oppression by giving them a space in the Washington Post, and that's how Fred Hyatt thought. Now, fast forward to
It's
just
almost like the opposite,
the
right?
complete opposite. Yeah.
I mean, it's really stunning because I'm sure there are people around the world who are still asking that question now. What the heck is going on over there?
Mm.
What do you see as like filling that void? And I'm sure it feels very personal to you what's happening now and has happened at the Washington Post.
Yeah, it's totally it's deeply deeply personal. I mean, plenty of people will say, right? And I get it. Like, ugh, a job is a job. These institutions aren't your friends. You should have never give them your 100%. And I guess I never quite saw it that way. I mean, I saw it as being able to again do what was good and do what was right. And for me, I mean, I realized that it was very rare also to have a editor of color or a black woman editor. Like I just had different sensibilities than most, and
Yeah.
that was valued at the time. And
Yeah.
now we've gotten to a point where it's not just undervalued, it's actively being labeled as a threat
Yeah.
per the termination letter, right? So it's this complete 180 in such a short amount of time, which goes beyond, oh, don't give institutions like this is a real, I call it a capture,
Yeah.
a strategic capture
Yeah.
of the media. And, my point is only buttressed by what happened just a few weeks ago with, the newsroom being absolutely decimated
Yeah. Yeah.
with layoffs. So it's scary. It should be sobering. I have been saying the warning signs were there when Bezos decided to censor the opinion pages back in 2025, or sorry, 2024,
Just before
2025.
the election.
Just before, yeah, correct. The Harris endorsement being killed.
Right.
So much was going on that I think people missed the implications of the paper of Watergate being told that it could not publish something,
Yeah.
or and looking back now, Yeah, what can I say? I feel not only sad for so much talent that's been lost. I feel sad for the city of DC, actually,
Yeah.
particularly with local coverage. And I'm just like, where's this talent? Where are we gonna go? And what are now it leaves a vacuum, it leaves a void for um, mistruths, half truths, fabrications, right? And it also just represents what it feels like a kowtowing to Trump, and to
Yeah, I mean, and for me, it's my hometown paper. So it, in that sense, it's a loss. Wrote for the Post as a
Mhm.
freelancer for over a decade, and have dear colleagues there. But I think also there are so few places in journalism where you can go and find an editor like Fred Hyatt or someone who's been writing for the Washington Post magazine when it existed
Mhm.
for, or editing for them for decades, right? And there really aren't, there's maybe three places in the country where you have this deep journalistic excellence and knowledge. And that's been destroyed. And that's where people like you won't get that opportunity to raise your hand and have someone, see your talent so that 10 years later, 15 years later, you can be doing the things you're doing now.
Mhm.
And that's the part that really breaks my heart when I was laid off and we had a mass layoff and people, have been in there for 15, 20 years
Mhm.
at Newhouse. And it really is destruction. It's just really heartbreaking.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
Yeah, and it's getting at the heart of like certain deep and profound questions for our society, right? So this is also happening at a time when we do have the rise of not only the rise of AI being forced down our throats, right? But we're contending with particularly, even just this administration um, using AI images, deleting government records and
mm-hmm.
websites and things like that. So the very foundations, even of, I mean, for many of us who are journalists, we're taught to look to government accounts and
Mm-hmm.
government data and
Right.
like that even the foundations of even what is true and what people perceive to agree on is
Yeah.
true is being shaken at a time when um, places like the Washington Post are being destroyed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I worry, and I guess this is where the independent journalists we're gonna do what we can, but what does that look like without, particularly without the resources,
Yeah.
right? To be able, particularly those who are still interested in doing independent reporting. Yeah, I'm like, are we gonna Substack our way out of this?
Right.
I'm
Right.
not. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But maybe new things. I believe new things will be birthed. But right now, I'm like, hmm.
Yeah, I'm asking all those questions too.
Mhm.
And I don't want to, overstep, but I would love to hear from you also how much you can say about the sort of lead up to your departure from the Post.
Mhm.
In your newsletter, it seems like your stories were being killed or your columns were being killed, and then Columbia canceled your class on race and media. And, as you were saying, like, take us back a year
Mhm.
to the early months of the Trump administration when there were mass firings of federal employees and attacks on trans and reproductive rights and dismantling of DEI programs, right? It was sort of one thing after another. What was that period like for you? And then, leading up to your departure, and then take us through what you can share about that experience.
Sure. I mean, I could definitely, I mean, my mentality, my attitude was I was like, I'm gonna do the work as best as I can until I can't anymore. And I think that was the attitude for a lot of people within the department,
Yeah.
even before some of these massive changes. I think this is pretty, there's always been, I think, throughout media, and it was there at the Post, this, especially when Trump won both 2016 and for the second term, this pull to be like, we we need more right-wing voices, like for balance, right? Or not even balance, but like this kind of there's always been this the tide has always been wanting to pull right
Mm-hmm.
due to this odd, I think, perception that the Post is so left leaning, which I'm sure to a lot of people, they saw me as this like Che Guevara militant, like Marxist,
Yeah.
which, to me, I was like, it's not, doesn't fit my definition of. I still think Washington in general and the Post in general is still a pretty centrist, liberal-ish, but still pretty like safe
Mm-hmm.
paper,
Mm-hmm.
safe city.
Right.
I would say, I mean, yeah, again, the signs were there, but anyone watching, paying attention after the editorial with Kamala Harris was pulled,
Mm-hmm.
notice that we columnists were able to dissent. So I
Mm.
published, a
Right.
few of my colleagues published critical pieces.
Mm-hmm.
We also signed a letter saying we disagreed with the editorial or with that decision. And part of it was we took very seriously that we as journalists cared about journalism and we wanted readers to know, okay, this decision is being made, but this is where we stand, right? Notice then when the editorial page was told that it could only focus on free markets and personal liberties, whatever that meant,
Yep.
and not publish anything else. Notice that there was no dissent published.
Mm, yeah. Yeah.
So, in the span of not even a year,
Right.
we went from being able to critique to not, at least on the editorial side. So for me, I thought naively, perhaps, that at least if we were able to dissent publicly and with well-reasoned, argument, but publicly and internally,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, that we'd have a fighting chance. Um,
Mm-hmm.
all of that notion was dissolved for me,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
with what happened to the editorial section, and then obviously with what happened to me. Um, I still, I guess, to this day, with everything going on, I still think I'm the only one who's been sort of publicly like made an example of
Mm-hmm.
in terms of being punished and censored for stating basic facts or doing my job,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Right.
in the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk shooting. But that I did not expect, obviously. But I, yeah, I guess the other thing I could say is, um, it was just, again, really sad to see first, I think, anyone paying attention, in terms of editorial. First, it was the women editors and writers who were leaving first, or
Mm-hmm.
cut first. And then it got to the point where I was the only Black full-time opinions columnist left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and that's when I was like, oh wow,
Yeah.
okay, this is an active, not only attack on journalism, but particularly a dismantling and an attack on Black journalists at the Post in a city that, according to the last census, was nearly 40% Black.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so one can't, for me at least, can't disentangle the that happening along with the broader national trends of, anti-DEI, which is really a slogan for anti-Blackness, which is from
Yes.
the same kind of thread as the anti-CRT, which is also coming from critical race theory, which is also coming from BLM. Like I
Right.
covered all these things over the last decade or so. So now that the it was always going to end in us being purged, and
Mm-hmm.
now with Don Lemon, Georgia Fort
Yeah.
arrested,
Yeah. Right.
uh, this is where we're at.
Right.
So for me, it's just sad to see that the Post, um, I won't even say caved, has been an active participant in this oppression.
Yeah. I'm so sorry, Karen.
So where was I now?
I'm sorry for our profession. And I saw Georgia Fort speak at the Night Media Forum a couple of weeks ago. And yet, I do think when there are specific names and faces that
Hmm.
people see, like yours and like hers, then that it crystallizes it. And I think that visibility can also be something that people, I hope, can rally around.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of support. I do think harder for maybe my colleagues who then it just looks like, oh, it's just doing business, a mass layoff. And
Yeah.
but in our case with the Post, when you're owned by one of the richest men in the world,
Yes.
this idea that this is a business decision, it's going to make people really wonder, obviously what this is really, really about. Yeah.
Yeah. Where do
So
you stand legally with the Post, if you can share?
yeah, so I am in the process of what can I share? Of fighting back for sure. Some announcements to be made soon. So I've been working in the background on fighting back against this, initiated it at the very least. I'm a proud Washington Post Guild member,
Got it.
so the Guild has had my back. So they've also initiated a legal challenge to this in the background, but more to come from me soon. But suffice to say that like I'm not interested in lying down either legally. What happened was an absolute gross um, sort of travesty of and misrepresentation of what I did and what I said and yeah,
Yeah.
I'm fighting back.
Not surprised given the rest of this conversation. And I will say also, I actually wrote a story on social media policies at media organizations, and it got killed. But
Huh.
and I do think, I haven't looked specifically at all the since I wrote that was like 2 years ago.
Mm.
And I think having those policies on the books is often just to have it there when they need it,
Mm.
so that they can use it as a excuse.
Yeah, I mean the very true, and to understand that, like I have to tell people I worked on the opinion side,
Right,
so
right.
my job was to
Have opinions.
well, and not just have, I mean, again, back to 6 months ago in the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk um, killing, if anything, most people were like, this is like 10, like 20 degrees below what Karen normally says, and so, I mean, all I was talking about was just about America's tendency to absolve political violence frankly, on either side, right?
Mm,
Particularly when it's carried out by white men. And I was actually referencing the political violence of the Minnesota lawmakers that
hmm.
had been shot. But anyways, that's just commentary. And I was paid to do
Right, right, right.
told to do that. So yeah, being all of a sudden punished for even when it came to the opinion section in the early days, I helped draft the social media policies.
Oh my goodness.
So it's
Oh,
very, very twisted,
yeah, yeah.
full circle situation. Yeah.
What was, you said it was a surprise and you
Mm.
didn't expect it. What did you do in the sort of days day two, day three, like what was that like for you and for your nervous system? Like,
Mhm.
how did you handle all that?
Yeah, so actually, speaking of, I was actually home in Dallas because my father's health.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I actually had traveled back to he had for his birthday, honestly, and he had rebounded from a scare.
Mm,
So I was again, like in my mind, I was preparing to write his obituary even back then when I got
wow.
this. I was that and I got the actual email when I was training Muay Thai with a friend. So always that third line like in the background.
Interesting.
I just um was well, I guess I will say in the threat of resistance. So before or a few months before, there was a buyout or like an attempt to buy out
Right.
the entire opinion section.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to not take it. So I decided to stay on. Like I said, I was like, I'm gonna do my job until I can't.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get this email about, again, I've been in social media controversies before.
Yeah. Yeah.
My post got no like I just went on about my day, until I
Mm-hmm.
got this email on September 11th. I would just say, I mean, yeah, I was in shock. I was driving. I remember I was supposed to meet a friend. I was missing all my exits. Like I was like driving, and so I probably
Yeah.
should have just pulled over. It was probably a threat to the Dallas streets at that time. Like because I was just like I don't know if I was, but I was just like, oh, so it's come to this, and I was like. I know one friend told me like, Karen, it's okay. Like it's going to be the start of something beautiful. But I also was like, oh my God. Again, thinking of my dad, I was just, and RSS. I was supposed
Right.
to teach the
Right. Right.
course in a few weeks. My first thought was like, oh my God, I don't have time for this. Like
I love it.
almost like it was like some annoying call. I'm like, okay, I don't have time for that. But I wasn't processing
Right.
like,
Right.
I just got fired by email, no call, no nothing. Like after 11 years
Mm.
and being accused of putting my colleagues in, like I couldn't even
Yeah.
process
Yeah.
the process
Yeah.
of how. Um, so yeah, I guess I think about it now. I could have gone multiple ways, but I decided to just go public about it myself on Substack.
Yep.
Um, I guess I could have had this big plan, but I just was like, all right, let me just announce it myself on my own terms in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I did not expect, oh, maybe I should have. Like, I guess at the time we were having the Charlie Kirk, like firings and people being hunted down for saying
Mm-hmm.
anything negative about
Right.
Charlie. That it was a witch hunt.
Right.
But like I said, I didn't even talk about him
Right.
deep. So I was just like, I didn't, not that I was afraid, but I just didn't have much to say because as a
Mm-hmm.
journalist, we didn't have all the facts yet.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had to look back on it now, gosh, 6 months later, I mean, um, yeah, I guess there was a narrative that set in that I got fired because I talked about Charlie Kirk's views on Black women and a
Mm.
bit of controversy of saying, well, he didn't say it about all Black women, just those Black women, like, and so, people saying on both sides that that was why I got fired. And no, the official termination letter said that they believed I disparaged white men, talking about and I said very specifically violent white men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, I look back and it was an interesting case study of having misinformation even about myself,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
about when the actual reason could have, should have, been an opportunity, I guess, to like really debate, wait, is the Post really saying that violent white men are a protected class?
Right. Right.
Like, and that talking about violent white men not all white men, not some white men, but specifically violent white men, is punishable by career death,
Mm,
basically.
yeah. Yeah.
But we avoided that because it was much easier to debate this false thing of, oh, she didn't quote him right, or she didn't, which again, was besides the point. I think people were refusing to grapple with the actual gravity of what the post was saying.
Yeah.
Um, so, like I said, plenty to fight back on, obviously. So that's not over. But I would, yeah, it was hard. It was hard in the last 6 months to kind of, I mean, yes, it led to, you know, Substack subscribers. It led to people supporting RSS and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a real, there were times, there was a real, I had to sort of grieve. Like I still would
Yeah.
have dreams of going, that was my life for a living,
Right.
going into that office of, like that time I described to you of having a mentor, having an editor who, allowed us to be free.
Yeah.
And then going from that to being caged and punished and strung upside the city gates and kind of humiliated on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's been challenging, but I mean, maybe this is where you guys help me adjust to this new,
Absolutely.
just new, because I do believe, I actually do truly believe that the skills that we do gain at those institutions, are part of what helps us. And I totally agree, like that without the burden or the needs of having to operate, at scale and where we're thinking of like, oh my gosh, okay, did this piece get, I don't know, for us, like a piece that gets 200,000, 300,000 views or something
Mm-hmm.
is like big, but we don't necessarily see any of that extra pay bump or
Right.
anything like that.
Right.
It all still belongs to the institution. All those emails, all the people
Right.
who subscribe to, they're like, we're coming to read you. And I'm like, that's great. But that benefits the institution,
Right.
right? But those skills that we have of, I mean, journalists, we're entrepreneurial, like by
Mm-hmm.
nature. It's just having to make that switch between getting that dopamine rush of like clicks and likes and like moving towards like, okay, are these subscribers? Is it paying? Is this actual kind of material runway for me to be able to do the work that I want to do? So making that switch of like being like, hey, please click like to like, hey, please open your pockets.
Yes.
It was, but I, at least at the time, I think people really did step up and have literally given me the permission to like, you're free. I feel a
Yes.
little like it's okay, it's okay. So I'm still a little, I'm working through it still a
Yeah.
bit. Um, and maybe there's, if there's any journalist therapists out there who can like, just in terms of like I said, I think, yes, I'm a fighter, but there are times when you do absorb a lot of blows in a short amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
and like to
Yes.
take the time. So I'm trying to give myself a little bit of time to process and heal, which
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah.
why teaching feels nice right now because it gives me time to heal my wounded journalist
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
at the moment, and hopefully emerge with something that feels, or as a version of myself that feels more, or just is better, is more aligned with what I really want to do, and hopefully is more free and more protected, precisely protected because we have sovereignty.
Yes.
And what does it look like to build sovereignty in a moment where, um, you know, not just journalism, but like social media platforms have their own algorithms and agendas and deprioritize
Mm-hmm.
news or deprioritize women of color. I'm basically shadow banned on Twitter, so that blue sky
Mm.
is my weapon of choice.
Mm-hmm.
in Substack notes, I would say. Um, so yeah, again, what does sovereignty look like when we're still dodging bullets?
Right. Right. Yeah.
In terms of how do we get our work out there? How do we get our work seen? The money that gets funded to our, often white male counterparts, creators, media, folks, um, and how do we not just be independent, but I think it's an opportunity for us to be interdependent. And so I do like the more collaborative nature of independent work, of people putting each other on each other's podcasts, each other's
Right.
platforms, and it's all still the same skill of being able to identify good conversation partners and good interviews and bring things to or bring interesting topics and perspectives, right? So long story short, I'm still figuring it out.
Oh, I feel like 6 months after I left Bloomberg News, I think it took me 6 full months just for my nervous system to restore to equilibrium because
Mhm.
I didn't even realize what kind of constant state of being on edge until I was out of it, right?
Yeah,
And so then from that 6 months, then you can start to build,
yeah.
right? Then you have sort of like reconnection with yourself. But
And I'm on track, is what you're saying.
yes, you're exactly on schedule.
Yeah, it's right. Like literally, I think tomorrow will be 6 months since the termination, and it's only now out of the, obviously, like I'm having to navigate some of it publicly, but like it's only now that I'm like, okay, 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 okay. We can do this. We
Yes.
can, whatever it looks like, we can do this and like still keep a roof over my head, at the very least, and just be able to honestly maybe do better work. That's what I'm looking forward to perhaps being able to do. Like maybe it'll be smaller in terms of this idea of scale,
Right.
but it might be deeper, it might last longer, it might actually be more work that might be more influential,
Yes.
and be our our fuller selves of people who get it and not trying to
Yeah.
convince everyone who doesn't spending you know what I mean?
Yeah, and also, is there a difference between a page view where someone skims your 800 word opinion column and a subscriber who's going to take the time to read about your dad and your
Mm,
fig trees and, feel that they know you?
mhm,
Because ultimately, in a world where AI is so ascendant, knowing the creator, the writer, the journalist behind the thing, I think is ultimately going to be what the audience trusts
yeah,
more than the brand. I mean, we've lost so much faith in so many of our institutions
yeah,
that those names and people also all across. I talk to people now from my dad who's in his 80s to my kids who are teenagers turning off of social media, trying to have better relationships with tech. I just
absolutely.
think we're in a phase of transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do think we're in an age of those of us, I'd hope, who have really been true to ourselves this whole time in the last 10 years, like, harkening back to the beginning of our conversation. Um, I feel like I haven't changed since I was like eight. I'm still that person who, if anything, I'm kind of become more of the 8-year-old who's like now I'm actually trying to be a Power Ranger and train martial arts. Like, and I said this about the Washington Post, even, when I got fired, like anyone who's followed me, I have not changed, how do I put it? I haven't change my style. I'm willing to change, of course, my opinions and perspectives and like as a writer, admit when I'm like, you know what, I got this wrong. Like,
Hmm.
so that, yes. But in terms of, I think people will trust when you've remained committed to your own voice. If you can't
Hmm.
remain committed, if you can't subscribe to yourself to an extent, like and be committed to your own voice and your own moral compass, and your own sort of groundedness in A, who you are, and B, what you believe to be right and good and true, then why should anybody else, right? And I think it's not just AI. I think we're also seeing, a lot of grift, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of in terms of sometimes the creator space where, and there's maybe a fine line. Somebody's grift is someone else's professional pivot. I get that, but I do uh, think that there's deep value to people who are saying, okay, well, not grift, but maybe I'm going to pivot with the zeitgeist of the time, like the political climate
Mm-hmm.
is changing. Um, for me, again, I am seeing the brunt of it, but it doesn't mean that I change my values
Mm-hmm.
or that I change, again, what I see to be right and good in the world and calling out injustice and again, processing the big trees with other people. So I think and I see this with RSS as well. Like, we're gonna, we're probably headed towards a time where people who are able to convene people in the most sort of human of ways, like that's might even be a privilege and a luxury.
Mm.
And those who are forced to consume AI generated sort of slop or be constantly online,
Mm.
that's almost going to be a sign of almost like a certain digital like caste system.
Mm.
And that's part of the reason why I like creating or I like having an educational community in a
Mm-hmm.
way. Um, but yeah, trust is the currency. Trust, right? I think
Yeah. Yes.
attention, there's the attention economy, but
Mm-hmm.
now attention is fading and it can be manipulated in many ways, but trust um is something that takes a long time to build and very
Yeah.
easy to lose.
Mm-hmm.
I think for women, especially, and women of color, especially on the internet, we face a lot more attacks and abuse, and especially women of color and Black women there's a lot of conversation now about us being business owners and how hard
Mm.
it is and how much when we make a mistake, we're
Mm-hmm.
more likely to be subject to the online pylons and
Mm-hmm.
the viral, that sort of thing. So I don't want to say it's all roses in this new climate, but I do think, yeah, we're in the age of this sort of, for better or worse, like the individual to be able um, to like it's not just that, it's those of us people who have leadership skills right now, like
Mm-hmm.
clearly you do,
Oh.
right? Like that, like we need leaders right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot, like we have an absolute absence of any sort of moral authority, in my opinion. The Epstein files, going to war,
Yeah.
do not have these or all these spiritual gurus who are now being caught up in this. Our culture, at least, I think, does not have many examples of ethical leadership,
Mm-hmm.
and that's maybe happening at the very, very micro level, which
Mm-hmm.
may be okay, and might actually be um, maybe insulate from the pressures of like hero worship or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you that, and it's maybe more economically sustainable this way, where we don't, like you said, we don't need to have 2 million subscribers.
Right.
Like the post that you can, I mean, you can live on like actually maybe like a couple thousand.
Right. I mean, if you have a few thousand subscribers paying you 80, $100 a year, you know,
You're okay.
that's money. That's what one journalist probably would live on.
Yeah.
And I loved what you said that you have to subscribe to yourself.
Hmm.
Because when I started my independent journalism career, I always said I'm going to review my contract with myself in 1 year. And
Aw.
every November 10th, the contract gets renewed or I rethink it. And that I think also is the relationship with the reader, like our audience. If we are showing up for them and we're transparent about our learning and our process, we can all grow and evolve together.
Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna have to get tips from you too. I'm seeing a lot of people coming up on there like, this is my 1 year independent anniversary, my 2 year independent anniversaries. I remember Mehdi Hassan talking about leaving MSNBC and then starting Zateo. He was just like, this is the best ever. And I'm like, this was a couple of months ago, and I'm just like, I think so. I can see it. I'm still healing because I was a bit
Yeah.
battered by all of this and then, family stuff. Um, so I'm hoping and believing. I'm also turning the big 4-0 this year as well. So it's just like it's a lot of life and
Best
professional.
decade ever.
That's what everyone says.
Yes.
That's what everyone says. I have to, like I said, choosing to subscribe to that all of the just faith, like that a lot of this is possible. And like I said, I think I've just been through so many, I'm just be transparent. Like right now, this second, like I'm like, okay, this has been a lot of blows.
Yeah. Yeah.
But okay, again, there's potential here, and there are people who seem to believe in me sometimes more than I believe in myself. And um, the readers, they also keep me going. This keeps me going. Like I said, that I am turning the big 4-0. There are times where I used to joke if this whole journalism thing doesn't work out, I would fight people in cages for money. So almost 40, and I need my brain to. So I'm like, all right, the fighting people in cages, like, at least like professionally, amateur I'll do, but professionally is not a path. So me and my brain got to make this thing work. So
Oh, well,
uh,
we have got your back here at the IIJ, 100%, Karen.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, it's such a great conversation. Was there anything we didn't cover or I didn't ask that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, I think, I mean, I guess we covered it a little bit in terms of what the creative process or the sort of daily habits
Mm-hmm.
are. Um, yeah, people sometimes ask me how I think about writing, if we
Mm.
talk about that. I mean,
Yeah.
um, again, and this is something I have to toggle between um writing like a column. There's a particular format we have, usually 800 words
Right.
and 800 to like 1,000, and then that's it. Versus, and then I got into the land of Substack. I'm like, y'all are writing a lot.
Yes.
My inner editor wanted to be like, um, but I think personally, um, and maybe this sort of fits the age that we're in because right we keep being told that people don't want to read anymore.
Mm-hmm.
People don't have these attention spans.
Mm-hmm.
You got to make it short. However, I've just seen with even some of my recent pieces that are longer than this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, wow, oh, people read to the end. So I guess for me, like the way I think about it, like sort of like there's a certain discipline in saying, okay, I'm gonna put some boundaries
Mm-hmm.
around, not necessarily in terms of word count, but in terms of like, how can I get this point across in as an elegant a way, which is often as simple a way
Mm-hmm.
that I can. And that I credit with being on Twitter a lot with the 40
Mm.
characters. So I actually think social media in many ways is good training for, it sounds counterintuitive, but I think it's good training for expression. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
only had this amount of time, this amount of space, like what is the essential thing and part of what gets one's point across. I actually grew up playing piano. So I think a lot about art, and I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot about how in music and in even photography and design, um, leaving a pause or leaving certain things unsaid for people to fill in the spaces themselves is part
Mm.
of what creates the piece.
Mm-hmm.
So there are times when I don't. say the thing and I leave it as a question, then
Mm-hmm.
leaving you to fill it in yourself. I'm not writing it all out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for people who are maybe musically inclined, I think a lot about beats and about the rhythm
Yes.
of a piece and about like the opening and the end, like verse, like
Mm-hmm.
so that's also it keeps it fun, even
Mm-hmm.
if it's a heavy subject. So yeah, in terms of column writing, the most important parts for me, the lead, and the kickers.
Yes. Yes.
And so I got good at having devastating kickers.
Mm. Yes.
Um, just I want my pieces to be, I go for the gut. I want my pieces to be the sort of pieces that people keep thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I'd hope with not having to, I don't know, it's a balance. Like as we said, getting your reps in and
Yeah.
practicing being on the page is important. I don't miss the daily grind of having to crank out things
Yes.
on every little news thing. I don't miss that. But I'd hope that, especially once I get to a better like cadence with where I want my writing to be, sort of more regularly, like that I'd be able to apply that to, or that style to, like I said, pieces that have more, are not as reactive, have more alpha,
Mm.
like
Mm.
be able to tie certain dots together. That's what I tell people.
Go back to your philosophy roots.
Yeah,
Yes.
and a lot of it again, I would say, particularly as women, particularly as Black women, particularly as women of color. I was seeing this the other day, and I will claim eldest daughter privilege. One thing that I will say that I am good at is pattern recognition. I'm just like, wait a sec, like oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is a pattern here. Let's like spell this out. And part of it is like just our survival instinct
Yes.
in order to survive in a sort of male dominated, sort of white supremacist world.
Mm-hmm.
You learn how to be very good at like being like, ooh, the atmosphere is changing here.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
I actually think that made me very successful as a freelancer because I'd be like, oh, the assignments are getting like 5 weeks apart instead of 3 weeks apart.
mhm.
And the stories are a little bit shorter. The pay rate is going down. And that keeps us alive as entrepreneurs as well as,
Mhm.
when we were fighting off tigers or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. So part of that is part of our jobs in the world is like to be like, guys, we're noticing a pattern here. Like
Mm-hmm.
pay attention. And
Yeah.
so yeah, for me, in terms of the writing process, I'm like, okay, so much of it is like this dot, this dot, this dot. And how do you do that but create something, like I said, I write about a lot of difficult subjects, so I'm always trying to make something beautiful out of the darkness, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And even and I write out of I keep telling myself if I had an album cover, I think many of us journalists are besieged idealists. And as Fred Hyatt used to tell me, the privilege of being an opinion writer, especially, is we get to write about the world not just as it is, but as we think it should be. Reporters, it's the facts, it's the who, what, when, where, why. This is just
Mm-hmm.
what it is. But we get to editorialize. We get to say, well, this is what we think it should be, and it requires us to help keep people's imaginations open to us to what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what's going to keep the fight going for a lot of people just imagining a better world. And it sounds so cliche, but it's true.
Amen.
It's
Yeah,
so
no.
true.
Well, we'll keep reading and following you. Karen, Attiah, thank you so much for being here today. I really, really appreciate it. I know folks are going to follow you at Resistance Studies School
Mhm.
series, the Resistance Studies series, and subscribe to the Golden Hour. We will look for your forthcoming book, and we look forward to staying in community with you. Thank you so much for being here, Karen.
Thank you, Catherine.
The Freelance Journalism Podcast is a production of the Institute for Independent Journalists. Our mission is the emotional and financial sustainability of freelancers of color. Learn more about our work at theiij.com and use the code POD10 for a discount on our annual conference and other events open for registration now. That's POD number 10. And please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or both. You can find our free webinars and other offerings on YouTube. And your recommendation and sharing with friends is the greatest compliment and helps us discover new listeners. Thanks for listening.